Hello, Stop Vinyl again. How are you today? What are we going to do today? Well, in this, I would like to do, in English and American, the top 10 keyboard players in rock and roll. So what I'm going to do today is the top 10 keyboard players in rock and roll, as you saw from the intro here with a little, don't mention anything yet, but getting back to what I was saying, I will decide to do the top 10 players in keyboards. Now let me give you the parameters of my top 10 list. And in the comment section, please, if you don't agree, if I miss somebody or somebody you think is really good, or trust me, this is an opinion, so I would like to hear what you guys have to say. But these are keyboard players that are not really the front men, they're not the singers. Now, there's exceptions of 2 of them that do sing quite a bit in their band, but the others, they're just technical keyboard players. Now, the 2 that I did pick in this top 10 countdown are, 2 of the players are almost front men, but not really, because there's other people that sing in that particular band. But I'm picking them, the criteria for the picking of these members as their technical prowess. And I'm going to go from 10 to 1, top 10. Now this was a hard pick for me. I went through my collection, I listened to a lot of different players, and I got all kinds of stuff. It's like, there are a lot of really good keyboard players out here, but I wanted to avoid certain ones. Like there's no Elton John, there's no Billy Joel. Now they're both very proficient keyboard players, piano players, organs, and what have you. I didn't include them because they're really singer-songwriters, essentially. So when I do drummers, it'll be the same thing. I'll be leaving out Don Henley and most likely Phil Collins for that reason, even though they're both competent drummers. But getting back to the keyboards, what I'm trying to say here is that the keyboard players here are, the ones I'm covering are going to be keyboard players that are specifically technical in their playing. I mean, most of the time, we're going to go right to the pinnacle of keyboard art. And this is the classical period. And when I say classical period, I'm really talking about 60s, 70s, and early 80s. After we get past the 80s, now you're getting into deep programming. You get into the development of all kinds of polyphonic synthesizers that are much different, where you're doing tape loops and different things. Now, a lot of them are very proficient in what they're doing, but this is good old-fashioned keyboard playing that can play a piano, organ, the traditional keyboard instruments, not so much of tape looping and sampling and digital music that, of course, really dominates past 1985 into the 90s and up until now. Now, there are a lot of great keyboard players in those eras, and I avoided that because that's really a different era. These people that I do are just your classic, top-notch keyboard players. All right? All right, without further ado, let's start with our number 10. Now again, please, if you don't agree with me, let me know. Say, hey, you missed this guy, or that guy, he's better than that. That's great. That's what the comment section is all about. That's exactly what this is all about. So, without further ado, with a bit of wine, of course. Gruner Veltliner, by the way. Excellent grape. Great grape. Cheaper version of Riesling, actually. Eastern Europe, sort of thing. Very nice. All right. Number 10 is Jeff Downes. And we're going to start with Asia album. Now, Jeff Downes had done work before Asia, but I'm going to use the Asia album as what most people know him for. Great stuff. Solid keyboard work. Really good basic synthesizer. A little bit of organ, a little bit of piano, but mostly synth type work. Very good. Structured, harmonic, but always in the background. Not a virtuoso or a soloist, really, per se. He does occasionally from time to time, but that's not his forte. What I think is great about Jeff Downes is that he's able to write some really lyrical, catchy, real ballads with some real deep hooks in them, like Only Time Will Tell and even Heat of the Moment. They all have them really good keyboard hooks to them, and very good. And as I said, a popular and a really good keyboard artist, and really good piano player. He does some singing too, not a lot, but a little bit. Okay, so our number 10 is Jeff Downes from Asia. Okay, number 9. Number 9 was tough because I think he should be a little bit higher, but I'm going to put him in this. Number 9 is Robert Lamm from, of course, Chicago. Now, a lot of people don't consider his keyboard playing, and the reason for it is the fact that he does a lot of singing. Now, he's one of the exceptions, in the next one I'll do too, where they're not technically the frontmen, or they kind of are, but he shares the singing at this particular era in Chicago with Peter Cetera on bass and, of course, Terry Kath on guitar. The three of them sing. They're the main singers. Now, everyone else harmonizes and does background vocals. Robert Lahm wrote a lot of the songs, of course, Color My World and what have you. But I wanted to really showcase him because some of the early Chicago is very keyboard-driven music. Does anybody know what time it is? Color My World. Wake Up Sunshine. A lot of these songs are very keyboard-oriented. I mean, and this album is a perfect example. This is, of course, Chicago 2. Again, love the vinyl. Look at this. Just incensed stuff. Came with a poster. All kinds of paraphernalia. But Robert Lahm, he's one of these guys that's he's overlooked at times. So I really wanted to kind of highlight him in this. He is a proficient keyboard player and a really good songwriter. Not only does he play the Fender Rhodes piano a lot in this, he also plays a regular stand-up piano and grand piano on some occasions, and a little bit of organ, and definitely jazz-oriented and classically trained. And Robert Lahm is really one of these overlooked keyboard players. A lot of people don't consider him. He's not as flashy as some others, but I really wanted to get him in this top 10, and he really was really good. So Robert Lahm from Chicago is number 9. Okay, moving down the line to number 8 is, of course, Dennis DeYoung from Styx. And, of course, I picked the Grand Illusion album, which, of course, has Come Sail Away. And he is really very much a strong virtuoso keyboard player. Really good. Very good on organ, very good on piano, great songwriter. But the reason why he didn't rank as high as some of the others is because he's a singer too. He really was. For the early part of Styx's career, Dennis DeYoung was the front man. It wasn't until Tommy Shaw comes into the band, until I think Crystal Ball, I think, was the first album with Tommy Shaw. But up until that point, really was Dennis DeYoung. And he had some help on vocals on some of the Kowalski and a couple of other members, the Penosa Boys. But it was really Dennis DeYoung doing the singing. I mean, he wrote Lady and all that, have you, and he does most of the singing. But we have to realize he writes all those keyboard songs. So he's also writing the keyboard music. He's a very proficient and very good keyboard player. Very prog-oriented. If you look at Styx's first and second album, very proggy, very kind of cool stuff. A lot of it, not as wild singing here. Lots of keyboard stuff with many different intros and levels. He actually does a version of Fanfare for the Common Man by Aaron Copland before Emerson, Lake and Palmer did, which is interesting. It's a little different, of course, but the point is that he is a really proficient keyboard player. So Dennis DeYoung, I want to get him in there, even though he is kind of an exception to the rule. He's almost borderline like Billy Joel and Elton John. He is a singer, but I wanted to really get that in there, that he was a really really good keyboard player. And of course, I love looking at these albums with all the this one has a poster, so it's like you got the whole Styx poster here. Come on now, you're gonna get this in a CD? Tell me, you're gonna get that? You're gonna get that in a CD? Yeah, I don't think so. No. Oh, you'll get it on a digital download, right? Yeah. How many pages would that take to print? Yeah. So again, there is a reason why people buy vinyl. So just thought I'd add that in there. So yes. So Dennis DeYoung from Styx, definitely up there on the top 10. So he is number 8. Now, again, this is my choice. Number 7, of course, Richard Wright from Pink Floyd. All right. He did some singing, and a lot of people would argue, well, what kind of keyboard player? I mean, he's not a flashy player, but he is an amazing, ethereal, mood-making keyboard player. Without Wright, Pink Floyd would not be Pink Floyd. And the material that he wrote and the importance of Wright's music in Pink Floyd, and I picked Wish You Were Here because he really creates that whole background of sound. Albums such as Metal, Dark Side of the Moon, he's very, very important, and very important in the progressive rock kind of era, but also important in the fact that he creates the mood with the keyboard. It may not be the amount of notes he plays, but it's how he plays the notes. And of course, he's a very proficient player. I mean, he plays piano, plays keyboards, he's excellent. Of course, they kicked him out of the band in The Wall. I mean, there's all kinds of stories about Pink Floyd, which is crazy. He is a founding member, and he is a key component in Pink Floyd. And the music that he wrote and what he did with Pink Floyd is very important. And he really defined a whole era of keyboard playing. You could see his influence on bands later on like Depeche Mode and New Order and Joy Division and other bands that use keyboard very similar manner that Mr. Wright does. So yes, Mr. Wright is definitely Definitely up there. Now, next in line, of course, would be The Doors. We cannot talk about it without talking about Ray Manzarek. I mean, he is just amazing. His keyboard work is great. It's traditional, basically organ and piano and Fender Rhodes stuff. He defined the sound of the Doors. There's no doubt about it. And some of the songs he wrote are very keyboard-driven. You have an intro in a lot of the major Doors songs in keyboard. And I picked this song, Waiting for the Sun, because Hello, I Love You, do, 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 do. He has that whole major organ thing going on there. This has so many good songs on it that have that kind of 5-to-1, My Love, just really good stuff. Along with Bobby Krieger, really getting that sound of the keyboard player. And I think he's lots of times very much overlooked, Mr. Manzarek. But he is very important to the Doors and a very instrumental keyboard player because he influenced a whole generation of keyboard players later. And he was a key band member in this player because if you compare him to the other bands, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles even, Cream, none of them were really keyboard-oriented music. All of them are guitar, bass, oriented music. Yeah, Beatles played some piano here and there, but Ray Manzarek is a major keyboard player, and every song has keyboards in it, and is a keyboard song. So yes, he is really the first of the major rock and roll keyboard players to really push forward. So yeah, we cannot leave him out of the list. Now we're getting down to the last. The top 5. Now, the next one I want to do, I'm using a non-traditional album because he did some great stuff with the Peter Gabriel era. Of course, I'm talking about Tony Kaye and Genesis. Tony Kaye is just great. I mean, he is a very, very proficient keyboard player. Amazing on piano, keyboard, synthesizers. Lots of leading-edge work in the early 70s in Genesis with the Peter Gabriel era, with Nursery Crime and Foxtrot and the other album that I appeared in, Selling You by the Pound. But Genesis Abacab is really cool because, of course, the opening song Abacab is a keyboard. I mean, it's very important. Tony Kaye really, once the band became a trio, his keyboard playing came to the front. Very good stuff. Just really, really good musician. He is really considered one of the founding members of the prog rock keyboard era. So he is really... very good stuff. And I've always loved Tony Kaye's sound. He always had a very kind of melodic sound that worked very well and interlocked well with Mike Rutherford's guitar and bass work. And even in the older days with Steve Hackett and Peter Gabriel, he was always kind of the anchor of the band. He'd always created that and the melodic sound that anchored the sound that Peter Gabriel played off of, and then later Phil Collins and what have you. And again, of course, with Abacab, of course, there's a good chance that he was writing the song ABACAB, which of course is the notes played on the piano. Very important. Tony Kaye again, really great keyboard player and a long breadth of career too. Very good career. So yes. So moving down the line, now we're getting into some of the more top proficient players. And we can't hit keyboard players without hitting John Lord of Deep Purple. John Lord is the master of the organ. The crunchy, fuzzy organ, that's John Lord, man. This crazy stuff. I love this album, Space Truckin', that dun 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 dun. That's John Lord. Now people always think, oh wow, it's Richie Blackmore on guitar. Richie Blackmore wouldn't even have half of that sound without that keyboard bass crunchy sound. I mean, John Lord wrote a lot of this stuff. Early songs like Hush, just a lot of the tunes that he played. Very proficient and very underrated. If you ever seen Deep Purple live, you'd see John Lord's solos are amazing. He's up there with some of the top keyboard players. A very, very proficient keyboard player. Love John Lord, and really, I'd have to say, arguably one of the best organ players in rock and roll. Really, he had that really. Oh, you heard him play the organ. He's like. Sometimes you couldn't even hear the organ because it was really so melodically melded with the guitar of Richie Blackmore. And it was like Richie Blackmore's guitar sounded better with John Lord's organ. Okay? So yes, John Lord. Early pioneer of the heavy rock keyboard organ. So, moving on down. Now some of the other players here. Now we're going to get into the top 3. Now, this one is a member of a band he was in a couple different bands, but I'm going to highlight him in this particular band. He was in Yes, and then he played with Bill Bruford, but the majority of the work he did was with the Moody Blues. And of course, this is one of the first albums he appeared on, which was of course Long Distance Voyager, and I'm talking about Patrick Moraz. Amazing keyboard player. First of all, replacing one of the virtuosos, Rick Wakeman, which he may be next. Of Yes, Patrick Moraz is just amazing. Very, very proficient and classically trained piano player. Amazing on the Steinway, tickling the pinks, tickling those ivories beautifully. His organ work is great. His work in synthesizers are really good. Very proficient knowledge. Some would argue one of the best. I love his work. He's not my favorite, but he's up there with the top 3, and he is really, really good. Not only do you see his work in this, listen to his work on Yes, Tormentor's album, and then he did some work with Bill Bruford, which I will, when I feature drummers, I will feature him, because he did 2 albums with Bill Bruford, Patrick Moraz and Bill Bruford. This is a drummer and a piano player, and the work he did was amazing. Jazz-oriented, classically trained. I mean, he could do it all, and he was very, very good, and he's also a good melody writer. And a key essential ingredient of the Moody Blues in their later career. So when he did this, and he did a couple other albums that were quite popular. This big song on this one was The Voice, and of course you could hear the keyboards in that. Just really good stuff. Again, the album's just, there you go. Yeah, so Patrick Moraz, I wanted to get him in there. Sometimes overlooked, but a very, very good player. Okay, now we're going to get into the last 2. They're not hard to figure out. You obviously know who the first one's going to be. I mean, I got the t-shirt on. I'm giving it away just a little bit. But the first one, before we get into the top one, let's get into number 2. Number 2 is, of course, Rick Wakeman. And Rick Wakeman's work is just amazing. Just, if it wasn't for Keith Emerson, Rick Wakeman would be my favorite. But yes, we're talking about this keyboard player, Rick Wakeman. Not only did he do work with Yes, he also did some work with David Bowie, Space Oddity, that song that everyone loves. Who's doing the keyboard and Mellotron work on that? Rick Wakeman, of course. Rick Wakeman did Henry VIII, Journey to and the Six Wives, and then of course he did Journey to the Center of the Earth. He did soundtracks. Oh my God, amazing player with the capes and the dramatic. Oh my God, just amazing stuff. And of course, here we go, great stuff. And then of course, there's Rick Wakeman right there. Awesome. I've always loved Rick Wakeman's work. Some of the best Yes albums, I think, are the ones with Rick Wakeman on them. I like Tony Kaye's early work. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Genesis was Tony Banks. I'm sorry. Tony Kaye was, of course, the keyboard player in Yes. I like Tony Kaye's early work, and then he came back and did 90125. Okay, but Yes wasn't Yes without Rick Wakeman. So I'd have to say Rick Wakeman was really the way to go on this one. Okay, so definitely. He's up there. He's number 2. Okay, his piano work is great. His synthesizer and keyboard work is work. He did some great work on the Mellotron. Now, where I think he would edge out Keith Emerson in one area is the Mellotron. Keith Emerson never did much work on the Mellotron, where he did some great Mellotron work. Now, everything else, I'm going to give it to Keith, and we're going to talk to him in about 2 minutes. But yes, Rick Wakeman, go listen to his work. It's great. Okay, number 1 is, of course, Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And of course, I'm picking this album because we played Hold On, but he's got so much work. He's got this stuff he did with The Nice. He did a great version of West Side Stories America. Oh my God. He did a soundtrack I have over here called Nighthawks in the 80s, a movie with Billy D. Williams and Sylvester Stallone. The soundtrack's amazing. Very, very talented piano player and very talented keyboard player. And really one of the major innovators in the field of the use of the synthesizer and Moog and ARP synthesizers. Even Pete Townsend called him a couple of times when he started using the ARP synthesizer in the great album Who's Next with Bob O'Reilly. He didn't get the whole thing, and Keith Emerson gave him kind of a tutorial over the phone. And that's kind of an interesting story that I read about. But yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I was playing Hoedown on the beginning here. Just an amazing album. This keyboard work is great, and this really features a lot of stuff on this particular album. This features some great work on the Steinway 12-foot grand piano, amazing work and trilogy. His use of the synthesizer and Moogs, his use of organ, just the integration of all his music. Keith Emerson is by far one of the greatest virtuoso players, and if you look online as the greatest keyboard players in rock and roll, he usually comes up as number 1. And the theatrics he did. Some of the things he did was amazing. He's playing piano in this like gerbil hamster thing, and the wheels going upside down. He's playing all this crazy stuff. I mean, it's insane. Put daggers in his organ. I mean, he put on a show. Trust me. If you ever saw him, and I did a couple of times, amazing. I even have pictures of him over here with that organ dropping down on himself and stuff. I mean, it's just cool stuff. But yes, He is by far one of the greatest keyboard players ever to play, and we lost him in 2016. It's sad, but generally speaking, John Lord too. But yeah, I just wanted to add that in there. So yes, that was my top 10 for top 10 keyboard players. I will do guitar players, I'll do bass players, might even try singers, and of course drummers, which is of course my favorite. I'll do all those in different times, but I just want to throw this in here, just kind of get it going to show you the different formats that I'll be doing. I'll be doing like some top 10 musician stuff. So this was keyboard players. I thought I'd start with keyboard players because everyone starts with guitarists. Guitarists I will do. That'll be a little bit different than bass players and singers and what have you. And then I'll do some other stuff. I did the prog rock last week. I'll do some more prog, and then I'm going to do punk. I'm going to do proto-punk. I brought the punk rock and different genres and all kinds of stuff. So it'll be fun. So keep looking. Check things out. And by the way, we have auctions going on at Record Hub with Max J Records. He's doing some great stuff over there. So please get a shout out to him. Get over there and take a look at some of that stuff he's got on there. He's got Journey going on auction tomorrow, Infinity, which of course, great keyboard player there. I didn't make the list, but an honorable mention I will definitely give to Greg Rowley. Great stuff. Of course, he played with Santana too. But there's so many other keyboard players. And again, your comment sections for that, please. This is my opinions. I want to hear what you guys got to say. Who do you think's the greatest keyboard players? All right? And that's what it's all about. That's the fun part of this. All right? Until next time, Doc Vinyl says goodbye.